The alien ship looked nothing like what humans had imagined. It was not sleek or shiny, but covered in scars and patches where emergency repairs had been made. Smoke drifted from its damaged engines as it limped toward Luna Station. Ambassador Reed watched through the observation deck as the vessel struggled to dock properly. "Sir, they're requesting immediate medical assistance," reported Lieutenant Harris from the communications console. "Multiple casualties aboard," Reed nodded grimly. This was not how first contact was supposed to happen. For 3 days, Earth's deep space sensors had detected the approaching vessel broadcasting distress signals in 17 different languages. The translation computers had worked around the clock to decode the messages. What they found made world leaders lose sleep. The 4 major powers of the galaxy were dying. Inside the station's medical bay, Reed met the first aliens humanity had ever encountered. They were not the green-skinned, large-eyed beings from old movies. Instead, they were a mixture of strange forms. One looked like a walking crystal formation that spoke through musical tones. Another resembled a giant bird with 6 wings and silver feathers. The third was humanoid but with blue skin and extra arms. The fourth was something that seemed to shift and change shape constantly. "I am Ambassador Reed of Earth," he said carefully, using the translation device the aliens had provided. The crystal being chimed a response that came through as, "I am Speaker Bright of the Crystal Empire. These are my colleagues from the Stellar Republic, the Trade Federation, and the War Clans. We come seeking help, though we know we have no right to ask." The bird-like creature from the Stellar Republic spoke next. "We are sorry to meet your species under these circumstances. We had hoped to welcome you to the galactic community with celebration and gifts. Instead, we bring only death and desperation." Reed sat down across from them. The medical team was still working on injured alien crew members in the background. "Tell me what's happening." The shapeshifter from the War Clans began the story. 6 months ago, our long-range scouts detected something coming from the void between galaxies. We thought it was a natural phenomenon at first. Space debris, maybe a rogue planet. We were wrong. The 4-armed blue alien from the Trade Federation continued. They call themselves the Devourers, though we are not sure if that is a name or a description. They consume everything in their path: worlds, ships, space stations, entire solar systems. They eat technology and grow stronger from it. Speaker Bright's musical voice carried notes of despair. "We have fought them for 6 months. Our combined fleets number in the millions of ships. We have weapons that can destroy moons, shields that can protect entire planets. None of it matters. They adapt to everything we use against them." Reed felt cold. "How many have you lost?" 40% of our total military force," the War Clan representative said simply. 300 billion civilians, 17 homeworlds, and they are still coming." The Trade Federation member leaned forward with all 4 arms. "Your species is new to space travel. Your technology is primitive by our standards. You have achieved faster than light travel only recently. By all logic, we should not be here asking for your help." "Then why are you?" Reed asked. The Stellar Republic bird fluffed its silver feathers nervously. "Because conventional warfare has failed completely. Our strategies, our weapons, our way of thinking about conflict, none of it works against the Devourers. We need something different. We need soldiers who think differently than we do." Speaker Bright's music became urgent. "We have studied your species from a distance. Your history shows a talent for warfare that frightens us. You have fought wars on your single planet for your entire recorded history. Wars with weapons, wars with ideas, wars for resources, wars for survival. You understand conflict in ways that we do not." Reed thought about humanity's bloody history. World wars that killed millions, conflicts that lasted decades, the constant struggle for survival that had shaped their species. "What exactly are you asking for?" The shapeshifter answered, "We need ground forces. Our species have lived in peace for centuries. We know space combat, fleet tactics, orbital bombardment, but close fighting, personal combat, small unit tactics, we are children compared to humans." "The Devourers use swarm tactics," added the Trade Federation member. "They overwhelm positions with sheer numbers. Our soldiers break ranks and run. We do not know how to fight when outnumbered 10 to 1. The bird being spread its wings. We offer you everything we can. Our star charts that map 3 galaxies. Technology that will advance your civilization by thousands of years. Medical knowledge that will extend human life. Weapons, ships, energy sources. Membership in the galactic community as equals, not as junior partners." Reed was quiet for a long moment. "I need to speak with my government." Of course, Speaker Bright chimed. But please hurry. The Devourers have consumed the outer rim of our territory. They will reach core worlds within months. If we cannot stop them, all 4 of our civilizations will cease to exist. Within hours, Reed was in a secure video conference with President Kane, General Brooks, and Admiral Cross. The alien delegation waited in guest quarters while Earth's leaders debated. This could be humanity's chance to join galactic civilization, Admiral Cross argued. The technology alone would be worth the risk. General Brooks disagreed. If these aliens with their advanced weapons and millions of ships can't win, what makes them think we can? We'd be sending our people to die for nothing. President Kane studied the reports. What do you think, Ambassador Reed? You've met them face to face. Reed considered his answer carefully. They're terrified. These are species that have ruled space for thousands of years, and something has them completely beaten. But they're also desperate enough to ask a primitive species for help. That tells me they really have no other options. The question is, President Kane said, do we have soldiers who can do what they're asking? Fight impossible odds against an enemy that adapts to everything? General Brooks laughed bitterly. Mr. President, we have soldiers who've been fighting impossible wars their whole careers. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Somalia. Urban warfare, guerrilla conflicts, asymmetric fighting. If anyone knows how to fight when outgunned and outnumbered, it's the people who've been doing exactly that for the last 50 years. Admiral Cross nodded slowly. We'd need volunteers only. No drafts, no forced service. This would have to be people who choose to go. President Kane made the decision that would change everything. Tell them yes, but make it clear that we do this our way with our people using our methods. If they want human soldiers, they get human warfare. Reed returned to the aliens with Earth's answer. When he delivered the message, he saw something he had not expected in their alien faces. Relief mixed with fear. They had asked for help and received it. Now they would learn what that truly meant. 6 weeks after the alien delegation left Earth, the response began to take shape. It was not what anyone expected. In recruitment centers across the planet, a strange collection of humans volunteered for what military officials called extended off-world deployment against hostile forces. Colonel Stone stood in a warehouse in Nevada, watching as his new command assembled. These were not fresh-faced academy graduates or parade ground soldiers. The woman checking her rifle in the corner was Riley, a former demolitions expert who had been dishonorably discharged for using unauthorized methods in urban warfare. The thin man calibrating a sniper scope was Walsh, who had spent 8 years fighting in conflicts that officially did not exist. Near the equipment racks, Garcia cleaned a collection of knives with the careful attention of someone who had used them professionally. Park sat at a computer terminal, her fingers flying over keyboards as she tested the alien technology interfaces they had been given to study. None of them wore standard military uniforms. None of them followed standard military protocols. "This is what Earth is sending?" asked Dr. Vale, the Stellar Republic observer assigned to monitor human preparations. The bird-like alien's feathers ruffled with what humans had learned indicated confusion or concern. Stone loaded his sidearm and holstered it. "This is exactly what Earth is sending. You asked for soldiers. We're giving you specialists. But where are your formation drills, your parade ceremonies, your military discipline?" Dr. Vale's translator made chirping sounds of distress. Riley looked up from her rifle. "Doc, we're not here to march in straight lines. We're here to kill things that need killing." The alien delegation had expected Earth to send its best military units. Instead, they received volunteers from the shadows of human society. Former special operations personnel who had been quietly retired from official service. Military contractors who had worked in places that did not appear on any maps. Prison inmates serving life sentences who chose possible death in space over certain death in cells. Commander West supervised the loading of equipment onto the transport ships. The aliens had provided advanced energy weapons, personal shields, and military gear that their own forces used. The humans accepted it all politely, then loaded their own equipment alongside it. Chemical explosives that the aliens considered primitive, kinetic weapons that fired metal projectiles, devices that seemed designed for torture rather than warfare. "Why do you bring these crude weapons when we have given you energy rifles that can cut through starship armor?" asked the Trade Federation representative, its forearms gesturing at the human equipment. West picked up an old assault rifle and checked its action. Because energy weapons can be detected, blocked, or absorbed. Because chemical explosives work even when your shields are designed to stop plasma. Because sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The shapeshifter from the war clans watched human soldiers practice. Unlike alien military drills, the humans did not move in formation. They spread out, used cover, communicated with hand signals, and seemed to disappear and reappear without pattern. Your tactics are chaotic. There is no order to your movements. Sergeant Mills paused in his combat exercise. Order gets you killed when you're outnumbered. Chaos keeps you alive when everything goes wrong. 3 months of preparation produced a force that confused the alien observers completely. The humans had studied the enemy reports and alien military procedures, then promptly ignored most of what they learned. Instead of adopting galactic standard tactics, they developed their own approach based on centuries of human warfare. Dr. Lane, the human xenobiologist assigned to study devourer samples, worked closely with the alien scientists. Unlike her colleagues, she did not focus on weapons or tactics. She studied biology, reproduction cycles, social structures, and weaknesses. Her research reports made the alien scientists uncomfortable. "You are studying ways to make them extinct," observed Speaker Bright during one research session, "not ways to defeat them in battle. You want to eliminate their entire species." Dr. Lane looked up from her microscope. "You told us they're an existential threat to all life in 4 galaxies. Did you want us to defeat them gently?" The alien coalition had expected human soldiers to integrate into their existing command structure. Instead, the humans politely declined all attempts at joint operations. Colonel Stone's response was simple and final. "We appreciate your experience, but we work alone. Give us targets and stay out of our way." As the human force prepared to deploy, the aliens began to understand that they had not recruited an army. They had hired exterminators. The humans did not speak of victory or glory. They spoke of problems that needed permanent solutions. Captain Morris addressed his unit before departure. "Everyone understand the mission? We're going to a place where 4 galactic civilizations with millions of ships and billions of soldiers have been getting their asses kicked for 6 months. These bugs adapt to everything and eat technology for breakfast. Questions?" A voice from the back called out, "Rules of engagement?" Morris smiled coldly. "Kill everything that's not human or allied. Use any method that works. Win at any cost. The aliens want their problem solved permanently. That's what we do." The transport ship Vengeance departed Earth orbit with 300 human personnel aboard. They carried enough conventional explosives to level a small city, enough ammunition to supply a regiment for months, and enough chemical weapons to poison a planet's atmosphere. The alien observers noted with growing concern that much of the human equipment had no equivalent in galactic technology. During the journey to the war zone, the humans continued their strange preparations. They did not drill in formation or practice with energy weapons. Instead, they studied maps, discussed tactics that had no names in alien languages, and prepared equipment that served purposes the observers could not understand. Walsh spent hours studying sniper positions and kill zones. Riley designed explosive devices using alien materials in ways that made the ship's engineering staff nervous. Garcia practiced with weapons that were designed to cause fear as much as death. Park learned to hack alien computer systems using methods that bypassed every security protocol. "Your people are not soldiers," Speaker Bright observed one day. "They are something else entirely." Stone looked out at the stars ahead. "You're right. Soldiers fight battles. We end wars." The alien delegation realized they had made a request without understanding what they were asking for. They had wanted help in their conflict. Instead, they had acquired a force that did not think in terms of battles won or lost, but in terms of problems eliminated forever. As the Vengeance approached the war zone, the human forces made final preparations. They did not pray for victory or glory. They prepared for work that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. The aliens had asked for soldiers to help them fight. Earth had sent executioners to finish the job. New Haven burned beneath a sky filled with ships. The planet had been a Trade Federation agricultural world with 50 million inhabitants. Now it served as the final line of defense for the inner systems, and everyone knew it would not hold much longer. Colonel Stone watched the orbital battle from the surface command center. Alien warships traded fire with massive organic vessels that looked more grown than built. The Devourer ships absorbed energy weapon hits and seemed to heal from damage in real time. When Coalition vessels tried to ram them, the alien ships simply opened and swallowed the attackers whole. The situation is hopeless, Commander Vale told the assembled human officers. The crystal being's musical tones carried harmonies of despair. We have lost 60% of our orbital defense fleet in 3 days. Ground positions are being overrun across 6 continents. Stone studied the tactical displays showing enemy movements. Red markers indicated Devourer ground forces advancing through underground tunnel systems. Blue markers showed coalition forces retreating to prepared defensive positions. Show me the tunnel maps. The tunnels are death traps, Vale explained. The Devourers move through them like water. Our forces cannot match their speed or numbers in confined spaces. We have sealed most access points and are defending from fortified surface positions. Riley examined the geological surveys on her tablet. These tunnel systems connect to mining operations, subway networks, and natural cave systems. You've got a 3-dimensional battlefield and you're fighting it like a 2-dimensional war. The alien commander's crystalline form flickered with confusion. We do not understand. Our defensive doctrine calls for controlling high ground and maintaining clear fields of fire. The tunnels provide neither. Walsh looked up from cleaning his rifle. Your defensive doctrine assumes the enemy thinks like you do. These bugs don't care about high ground or clear fields. They care about getting close enough to eat you. Garcia spread maps across the table and began marking locations with a red pen. How many access points to the tunnel system are there? Unknown, Vale admitted. The Devourers have excavated new passages. They appear to create their own routes as needed. Perfect, Garcia said with a grin that made the aliens uncomfortable. Stone, we need to get underground. The human force split into teams and descended into New Haven's tunnel systems, while the coalition forces maintained their surface defenses. The aliens watched on monitors as humans disappeared into passages that their own forces had abandoned as too dangerous to hold. 6 hours later, the first reports came back. Walsh's voice crackled over the communication system from somewhere deep underground. Contact. Multiple hostiles in tunnel section C7. Engaging. The aliens listening to communications heard sounds they had never heard before in warfare. Not the clean energy discharges of their weapons, but sharp cracks of chemical explosives, the rapid fire of kinetic weapons, and stranger sounds that their translators could not identify. Human team leader. Report status, Vale requested. Stone's voice came back steady and calm. Tunnel section C7 cleared. Moving to C8, we have samples. Dr. Lane had accompanied the assault teams to collect biological specimens. What she found in the tunnels exceeded all previous intelligence reports. The Devourers were not simply large insects as the aliens had described. They were a complex ecosystem of different forms, each adapted for specific functions. They have scouts, workers, warriors, and something that looks like a command form, she reported over the radio. The warriors are 8 feet long with armor that deflects energy weapons. The workers modify tunnel structures in real time. The scouts move faster than coalition sensors can track. And the command forms? Stone asked. Intelligent. I watched one directing tactical movements for 20 minutes. It was coordinating attacks across multiple tunnel sections simultaneously. Riley's team encountered their first major Devourer concentration in the old subway tunnels beneath New Haven's capital city. The aliens had abandoned this area after losing 3 full companies to overwhelming numbers. When Riley's 12-person team entered the same tunnels, they carried equipment that coalition forces did not recognize. Multiple hostiles approaching from 3 directions, Garcia reported. Estimates suggest 400-plus individual contacts. The coalition officers listening from the surface expected to hear a desperate firefight followed by silence. Instead, they heard careful, measured sounds. Small explosions, the whir of machinery, and human voices giving calm tactical updates. East tunnel sealed with shaped charges. Hostiles redirected to North Passage. North Passage prepared. Initiating sequence. Chemical deployment successful. Moving to secondary positions. 20 minutes later, Riley's voice came over the communication system. Tunnel complex C through F cleared. No human casualties. Requesting hazmat teams for cleanup. Vale's crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated confusion and disbelief. Impossible. Our best units could not clear those tunnels with 10 times your numbers. Your best units fought them, Stone replied from underground. We hunted them. The difference became clear over the following days. Coalition forces fought the Devourers using standard military tactics. They met attacks with defensive fire, responded to movements with counter-movements, and tried to maintain organized battle lines. The Devourers adapted to these patterns and overwhelmed them with superior numbers and speed. The humans used no patterns that the Devourers could adapt to. They did not defend positions. They abandoned them after planting explosives. They did not counterattack. They disappeared and struck from unexpected directions. Most disturbing to the alien observers, they did not simply kill individual Devourers. They eliminated entire groups using methods that coalition medical teams refused to examine closely. Park worked with captured Devourer biotechnology in ways that made the alien scientists uncomfortable. Their communication system is biochemical, she reported. They use pheromone signals to coordinate group actions. If we can identify the chemical signatures, we can disrupt their command structure. Disrupt how? Vale asked. Fake signals to send them into each other. Panic pheromones to break up formations, or... Park paused. We can synthesize compounds that trigger feeding responses, make them attack each other instead of us. The alien coalition had fought the Devourers for 6 months using every advanced weapon and tactic at their disposal. The humans had been on New Haven for 1 week, and were fundamentally changing the nature of the conflict. They did not fight the Devourers in battle. They manipulated them into destroying themselves. Walsh established sniper positions in tunnel systems that provided sight lines across multiple passages. But instead of simply shooting individual targets, he used specialized ammunition designed to penetrate Devourer armor and deliver chemical payloads. Each shot did not just kill one enemy. It contaminated the area and made it uninhabitable for their species. Garcia's teams moved through the tunnels like ghosts, appearing long enough to plant devices that served multiple purposes. Some were simple explosives that collapsed tunnels. Others released airborne toxins designed specifically for Devourer biology. The most disturbing were devices that recorded Devourer distress calls and broadcast them continuously, drawing more enemies into prepared kill zones. Your methods are effective, Speaker Bright observed during a strategy meeting. But they are also terrifying. You do not simply defeat the enemy, you make them defeat themselves. Stone looked at the tactical displays showing human teams systematically clearing tunnel networks that had been written off as impossible to reclaim. You asked us to solve a problem that conventional warfare could not solve. Conventional warfare tries to beat the enemy. We remove the enemy entirely. The coalition forces watched from their defensive positions as human teams turned New Haven's underground into a death maze for the Devourers. The aliens had spent months losing ground to an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The humans had been there 1 week and were winning through methods that coalition forces did not fully understand and did not want to study too closely. But they were winning. For the first time in 6 months, the Devourers were retreating. 3 months after New Haven, human forces operated across 17 different star systems. Each deployment followed the same pattern that had confused and disturbed the Galactic Coalition. The aliens would brief the humans on enemy positions and defensive strategies. The humans would listen politely, then disappear to implement tactics that had no names in any civilized language. Sergeant Mills stood over a captured Devourer command organism in what had once been a crystal mining facility on the planet Edge. The creature was unlike anything in Coalition xenobiology databases. 8 feet tall, with 6 limbs that ended in both manipulator appendages and sensory organs. It seemed to shift between solid and liquid states as needed. It's been awake for 6 hours, reported Dr. Lane, checking the restraint systems. Vital signs are stable, but it's not responding to any communication attempts. The Coalition observer, a War Clan shapeshifter named Flo, watched from across the room. Our scientists have never successfully captured a command form alive. How did your team manage this? Mills checked his sidearm and approached the prisoner. We didn't capture it. We let it capture us. Then we killed everything else in its command group and kept it alive. It's isolated from its support network, which makes it vulnerable to individual pressure. Individual pressure? Flo asked. Dr. Lane activated recording equipment, enhanced interrogation techniques. We've studied their social structure enough to understand what kinds of stress break their psychological conditioning. What happened over the next 4 hours made the Coalition observer file a formal complaint with Galactic Command. The humans did not torture the Devourer in any traditional sense. Instead, they used a combination of sensory manipulation, chemical compounds, and psychological tactics that seemed designed to override the creature's basic survival instincts. The Devourer began providing information after 2 hours. Location of staging areas, command hierarchies, reproductive cycles, and tactical weaknesses. But the humans did not stop when they had tactical intelligence. They continued until the creature was providing genetic information, biological vulnerabilities, and details about Devourer society that no military force had ever possessed. This exceeds the requirements of military necessity, Flo protested. You have the information needed to defeat their forces in this system. Mills looked up from his notes. Defeat is temporary. We're gathering information to eliminate them permanently. The Coalition had spent 6 months fighting the Devourers as a military threat. The humans treated them as a species-level problem that required a species-level solution. Every captured specimen provided biological data that Dr. Lane and her team used to develop increasingly sophisticated weapons. On the world called Haven's Rest, Captain Morris oversaw the deployment of the first generation of human-designed anti-devourer weapons. The devices looked nothing like standard military equipment. They resembled medical instruments more than weapons, designed to deliver targeted biological agents rather than kinetic or energy damage. The compound disrupts their metabolic processes at the cellular level, Dr. Lane explained to the assembled alien commanders. Exposure through respiratory intake causes system-wide organ failure within hours. Environmental persistence is approximately 6 months, making affected areas uninhabitable for their species. Commander Vale's crystalline form flickered with disturbed harmonies. This is chemical warfare. The Galactic Conventions prohibit the use of biological weapons against sentient species. Dr. Lane continued her briefing without pause. Secondary effects include disruption of reproductive cycles in any survivors. Genetic damage that prevents successful breeding for approximately 7 generations. Psychological trauma responses that break down social cooperation instincts. You are describing genocide, stated Speaker Bright, musical tones carrying notes of horror. Morris looked at the alien commanders with no expression. You asked us to solve your problem. Your enemy wants to consume your entire civilization. Either they go extinct or you do. Pick one. The humans had moved beyond fighting individual battles to conducting systematic warfare against devourer biology itself. Research teams studied captured specimens not to understand their tactics, but to identify genetic weaknesses that could be exploited across their entire species. Riley's demolitions expertise had evolved into something that made Coalition engineers refuse to examine her work. She no longer simply destroyed enemy positions. She designed weapons that poisoned the ground, contaminated water sources, and released airborne agents that made entire planets uninhabitable for devourer biology. The compound binds to silicon-based minerals in soil, she explained, during a briefing that most alien officers left early. Half-life is approximately 200 years. Any devourer organism that attempts to establish colonies in treated areas will experience genetic breakdown. Within one breeding cycle, Walsh had adapted his sniper tactics to serve strategic rather than tactical purposes. Instead of eliminating individual high-value targets, he delivered biological weapons with surgical precision. A single shot could contaminate an entire devourer breeding facility with compounds designed to prevent successful reproduction for decades. You are not fighting a war, the Trade Federation observer reported to Galactic Command. You are witnessing the systematic extermination of a species using methods that exceed all boundaries of civilized conflict. Garcia's teams had perfected psychological warfare techniques that broke down devourer social structure at its foundation. They did not simply kill enemy forces. They manipulated devourer communication systems to broadcast false information, triggering territorial conflicts between different groups. Their social organization depends on chemical communication, Garcia explained to increasingly uncomfortable Coalition officers. We can make them believe their neighbors are competing for resources, or that certain groups have been infected with diseases, or that their leadership has been compromised by enemies. Park's technological innovations had evolved beyond hacking enemy systems to rewriting devourer biological programming at the genetic level. She worked with captured specimens to develop viruses that specifically targeted their species while leaving all other life forms unaffected. The virus inserts itself into their reproductive DNA, she reported during a briefing that several Coalition representatives walked out of. Each generation passes the genetic damage to their offspring. Population decline begins immediately and becomes irreversible after 3 breeding cycles. The coalition forces watched in growing horror as human tactics achieved results that 6 months of conventional warfare had not approached. Devourer forces were not just retreating, they were collapsing as a functional civilization. But the methods used to achieve these results violated every principle that the galactic community had developed over centuries of civilized conflict. Your species fights wars that never end, Speaker Bright accused during a heated strategy session. When you achieve victory, you continue fighting until nothing remains of your enemy. Stone looked at the tactical displays showing 17 star systems where Devourer forces had been eliminated entirely. That's correct. When something threatens our existence, we remove every trace of that threat. Your civilization tried to fight a limited war against an enemy that wanted to exterminate you. We're fighting an extermination war against an enemy that chose extermination tactics first. The alien coalition realized they had not hired mercenaries or allies. They had unleashed a force that understood conflict in ways that their civilized minds could not comprehend. The humans did not fight to achieve military objectives or political goals. They fought to ensure that their enemies could never threaten anyone again. Dr. Lane's final report to Coalition Command contained information that most alien scientists refused to review. Complete genetic mapping of devourer biology, detailed analysis of reproductive cycles and social structures, chemical formulations for weapons, designed to eliminate their species entirely. The devourer threat can be permanently resolved within 18 months using systematic application of the methods we have developed, she concluded. Complete species extinction is achievable and sustainable using current human tactical doctrine. The Galactic Coalition had asked for help in fighting a war. They received a solution that would end the war forever by ending their enemy forever. The question they now faced was whether they could live with the implications of what they had requested. The Devourer home system had no name in any galactic language. It existed in the void between galaxies, a collection of 13 worlds orbiting a dying star. For 2 million years, the Devourers had spread outward from this system, consuming resources and returning to breed. Now Colonel West stood on the command deck of the battle cruiser Retribution, watching as human forces prepared to end 2 million years of evolution. Orbital bombardment will commence in 30 minutes, reported Admiral Cross over the communication system. All human forces are to maintain minimum safe distance from target worlds. The Coalition fleet hung back at the edge of the system, their commanders watching in fascination and horror as humans implemented the final phase of their campaign. Over the past 18 months, human forces had driven Devourer forces back across 17 galaxies. Now they were ending the war at its source. Speaker Bright's crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy aboard the Coalition command ship. This is unnecessary. The Devourers are in full retreat. Their military capability has been eliminated. There is no need for this level of destruction. Commander Vale adjusted her position to face the human liaison officer. Your forces have achieved complete victory. Why continue the attack against non-combatant populations? Captain Stone looked out at the Devourer homeworlds through the observation port. Because victory is temporary. Elimination is permanent. As long as their species exists, they remain a threat to every other form of life in 4 galaxies. The weapons that human forces had developed over 18 months of warfare were unlike anything in Coalition arsenals. They did not simply destroy targets, they sterilized them. The warheads contained biological agents designed specifically for Devourer physiology, chemical compounds that would persist in planetary environments for centuries, and genetic viruses that would eliminate any possibility of species recovery. Dr. Lane monitored the weapon deployment from her laboratory aboard the Retribution. Initial dispersal pattern is optimal. Atmospheric saturation will be complete within 6 hours. Ground penetration is estimated at 40 meters, sufficient to eliminate all subterranean colonies. How long until biological effect becomes irreversible? West asked. The genetic viruses will integrate into planetary ecosystems within 72 hours. Any devourer organism that attempts to establish colonies in this system will experience genetic breakdown at the cellular level. Recovery time for natural evolutionary adaptation would exceed 1 million years, assuming any survivors exist to attempt adaptation. The Coalition observers realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not a military victory, but the deliberate extinction of an intelligent species. The humans had not simply defeated the Devourers. They had eliminated every trace of their civilization and made their home system uninhabitable for their biology. Flo, the shapeshifter from the War clans, transmitted an urgent message to Coalition Command. Human forces are implementing species-level genocide. This exceeds all parameters of acceptable military action. We are complicit in the extinction of a sentient race. The response from Coalition Command came back immediately. Continue observation. Do not interfere with human operations. Walsh supervised the deployment of the final weapon systems from orbit around the largest Devourer world. The planet's surface showed signs of 2 million years of habitation, cities that stretched across continents, industrial complexes that had processed resources from dozens of galaxies, breeding facilities that had produced the swarms that threatened civilized space. All of it was being systematically destroyed. Target zones Alpha through Zeta are confirmed sterile, Walsh reported. No biological activity detected. Proceeding to secondary target zones. Riley's teams had developed weapons that did more than kill living organisms. They broke down the molecular structure of Devourer technology, dissolved their architectural materials, and eliminated every trace of their civilization's achievements. Nothing would remain to indicate that an intelligent species had ever existed in this system. Cultural preservation protocols should be implemented, protested the Trade Federation observer. Even hostile species possess scientific and cultural knowledge that has value for galactic civilization. Garcia looked up from his tactical display. Their culture consisted of consuming other species. Their science was focused on more efficient methods of extermination. What exactly do you want to preserve? The systematic destruction continued for 6 days. Each Devourer world was subjected to bombardment that eliminated all surface structures, followed by biological weapons that sterilized the planetary environment, followed by chemical agents that would prevent any form of life from evolving in the contaminated areas. Park worked with engineering teams to ensure that even the planets themselves would be uninhabitable. Gravitational resonance devices will destabilize orbital mechanics over the next 1,000 years. The worlds will eventually spiral into their star. Complete destruction of all physical evidence of Devourer civilization. Morris supervised the final phase of operations from the surface of what had been the Devourer capital world. His teams moved through empty cities, placing devices that would eliminate any remaining biological material and break down the molecular structure of Devourer architecture. These buildings are grown, rather than constructed, reported one of his engineers. The molecular dissolution process will take approximately 3 months to complete breakdown. The coalition forces watching from orbit saw cities that had existed for millions of years simply cease to exist. Not destroyed by explosives or energy weapons, but dissolved at the atomic level until nothing remained but sterile ground. This is beyond warfare, Speaker Bright transmitted to the human command ship. You are erasing an entire species from existence. Not just killing them, but eliminating every trace that they ever lived. Stone responded without emotion. That's correct. When we eliminate a threat, we eliminate it completely. Future generations will never know that the Devourers existed, which means they will never try to recreate or revive them. The final reports came in from all 13 worlds. No biological activity detected, no technological artifacts remaining, no atmospheric contamination that could support Devourer biology, no genetic material that could be used for species reconstruction. The Devourer home system had been transformed into a sterile collection of dead worlds orbiting a dying star. Mission complete, West reported to Earth Command. Devourer species eliminated. Threat level reduced to 0. All human forces withdrawing to safe distance. The Coalition fleet remained at the edge of the system, their commanders struggling to process what they had witnessed. In 18 months, human forces had accomplished what the combined might of 4 galactic civilizations could not achieve in 6 months of warfare. But they had done it using methods that violated every principle of civilized conflict. Your species does not fight wars, Commander Vale transmitted to the human fleet. You conduct extinctions, Admiral Cross responded from the bridge of the human flagship. When someone threatens our existence, we ensure they can never threaten anyone again. You asked us to solve your problem permanently. That's what permanent solutions look like. The shapeshifter flow transmitted its final report to War Clan Command. Human military doctrine is based on absolute elimination of threats. They do not seek victory in battle. They seek extinction of enemies. Coalition forces should be aware that these methods could be applied to any species that humans consider threatening. The crystalline being Speaker Bright filed a formal protest with Galactic Command. Human forces have demonstrated capabilities that exceed all parameters of acceptable military action. They possess weapons and tactics designed for species-level elimination. The Coalition should consider the implications of having allied with a force capable of such complete destruction. The Trade Federation observer reported with forearmed gestures of distress. Human warfare is not conducted for political or territorial objectives. It is conducted for biological dominance. They eliminate competition rather than defeating opposition. Their methods ensure permanent resolution of conflicts through permanent elimination of opponents. As the human fleet prepared to depart the dead system, Dr. Lane transmitted her final research summary to Coalition Scientific Command. Devourer biology has been completely cataloged and countered. All possible evolutionary adaptations have been identified and neutralized. Species recovery is impossible using any known biological process. Extinction is confirmed and irreversible. The 13 worlds that had spawned the Devourer threat would orbit their dying star for another 1,000 years before gravitational instability dragged them into stellar immolation. By then, even the atomic traces of Devourer civilization would have been dispersed into cosmic radiation. The Galactic Coalition had asked for soldiers to help them win a war. Earth had sent executioners who ended the war by ending the enemy. The Devourer threat that had consumed 300 billion lives and threatened 4 entire galactic civilizations no longer existed. But the Coalition now faced a different concern. What did they do with allies who understood warfare as total elimination rather than political contest? How did they coexist with a species that solved existential problems by making them permanently extinct? The human fleet departed the dead system, carrying advanced alien technology and the knowledge that they had fundamentally altered the balance of power in 4 galaxies. Behind them, 13 sterile worlds continued their orbital dance around a dying star, monuments to the price of threatening humanity and their allies. The war was over. The enemy was extinct. The galaxy was safe. But the Coalition leaders who had requested human assistance began to understand that they had introduced a new factor into galactic politics that would change everything forever. Ambassador. Reed stood in the same observation deck where he had first met the alien delegation 2 years earlier. But the beings facing him now carried themselves differently. Gone was the desperate hope that had brought them to Luna Station. In its place was something that looked suspiciously like fear. "The war is over," Speaker Bright announced. Crystalline harmonies carrying undertones that human translators identified as relief, mixed with apprehension. "The Devourer threat has been eliminated. The Coalition wishes to express gratitude for human assistance in achieving this victory." Reed nodded politely. "Earth is pleased that we could help resolve your crisis. Our forces are returning home with the promised technology transfers and star charts." Commander Vale shifted uncomfortably. "There are matters we must discuss regarding future cooperation between human and Coalition forces." The celebration parades on Coalition worlds had lasted for weeks. 4 galactic civilizations declared holidays to commemorate their salvation from extinction. Monuments were erected honoring the alliance that had preserved all life in known space. But the celebrations carried an undercurrent of unease that had not existed before human involvement. "Your military capabilities exceed our initial assessments," the Trade Federation representative stated with careful, diplomatic language. "Coalition strategic planners are revising their understanding of human warfare doctrine." Reed looked out at the stars where human ships were already establishing patrol routes through formerly contested space. "Our methods were effective. The threat has been permanently resolved." "That is precisely the concern," Speaker Bright replied. "Your forces did not defeat the Devourers. You eliminated them completely. There is a difference that has implications for galactic stability." The shapeshifter from the War Clans spoke next. "Coalition military analysts have studied human tactical reports. Your species approaches conflict with objectives that exceed traditional warfare parameters. You seek permanent solutions through permanent elimination of opposition." Reed considered his response carefully. When something threatens the existence of intelligent life, half measures lead to incomplete solutions. The Devourers would have recovered from any defeat that left survivors. Complete elimination was the only viable long-term strategy. The alien delegates exchanged glances that their respective species used to indicate serious concern. Over the past 6 months, as human forces had systematically exterminated devourer populations across 17 galaxies, coalition governments had begun conducting classified assessments of their new allies. Human technological adaptation rate exceeds all previous measurements, Commander Vale reported. Your forces have reverse-engineered and improved upon coalition technology that took our civilizations millennia to develop. Your improvements focus primarily on applications for warfare and elimination of opposition. Reed smiled without humor. We learn quickly when our survival depends on it. Dr. Lane's research teams had indeed accomplished technological advances that surprised even human scientists. Alien energy weapons had been improved to penetrate any known defensive system. Propulsion technology had been enhanced to provide tactical advantages in space combat. Medical knowledge had been applied to develop biological weapons of unprecedented effectiveness. But the most significant development was not technological. Human strategic doctrine had evolved beyond anything that coalition governments had imagined possible. Earth's military planners no longer thought in terms of defending against threats. They had developed comprehensive strategies for identifying potential future threats and eliminating them before they could develop into actual dangers. There are reports that human forces are conducting surveillance operations in sectors that were not part of the devourer conflict, the Trade Federation delegate stated. These activities appear to be gathering intelligence on coalition military capabilities and defensive strategies. Reed did not deny the observation. Earth takes its security responsibilities seriously. We want to ensure that no future threats develop that could endanger our allies or ourselves. The truth was more complex than Reed's diplomatic language suggested. Human intelligence services had indeed expanded their operations far beyond the war zone. They were cataloging every species in coalition space, assessing their military capabilities, studying their political structures, and identifying potential future conflicts. General Brooks had been clear in his directives to intelligence teams. We ended one existential threat. We need to identify any other existential threats before they become actual problems. The coalition governments had begun to understand that they had not simply acquired powerful allies. They had introduced a species into galactic politics that operated according to principles that no other civilization followed. Humans did not react to threats. They anticipated them and eliminated them before they could develop. There are concerns about human expansion into former devourer territory, Speaker Bright stated. Your forces have established permanent installations in 12-star systems that were previously uninhabited. Reed looked at the tactical displays showing human colonies spreading across space that had been cleared of all opposition. Someone needs to ensure that those regions remain secure. Earth is willing to accept that responsibility. The human expansion was proceeding according to plans that had been developed during the war. Strategic resources were being secured. Defensive positions were being established. Industrial facilities were being constructed. Within 5 years, human space would extend across regions that had taken coalition civilizations centuries to explore. But the expansion served purposes beyond simple territorial acquisition. Human military planners were establishing positions that would allow them to monitor and influence political developments throughout coalition space. Every human colony was also an intelligence gathering post and a potential military staging area. The coalition appreciates human security contributions, Commander Vale said carefully. However, there are questions about the scope of human authority in implementing security measures. Reed knew what the alien was really asking. Coalition governments had begun receiving reports of human forces intervening in local conflicts, eliminating pirate groups, and resolving territorial disputes using methods that left no survivors to contest the resolutions. Earth believes in permanent solutions to security problems, Reed stated. Temporary fixes lead to recurring conflicts. We prefer to address root causes rather than symptoms. The shapeshifter Flo leaned forward. Human intervention protocols appear to involve complete elimination of opposition forces. There are no survivors to provide alternative accounts of conflicts. This makes it difficult to assess the accuracy of human situation reports. Reed maintained his diplomatic expression. Our methods are thorough. We ensure that resolved conflicts remain resolved. President Kane had been explicit about human policy in coalition space. We fought one war to save galactic civilization. We're not going to fight another one because someone decided to ignore the lessons of the first war. The alien delegates realized they were discussing a fundamental shift in galactic power structures. Humans had not simply helped win a war. They had established themselves as the final arbiters of what constituted acceptable behavior in their sphere of influence. There are reports that human forces have classified several coalition government activities as potential security threats, the Trade Federation representative stated. These classifications appear to be based on human assessments rather than coalition legal standards. Reed nodded. Earth has extensive experience with threat assessment. We prefer to address problems before they require military solutions. The truth was that human intelligence services had identified dozens of activities within coalition, space that could potentially develop into future threats, political movements that promoted expansion at the expense of other species, scientific research into weapons that could challenge human technological advantages, economic policies that could destabilize regional security. All of these activities were being monitored. Some were being influenced through diplomatic pressure. A few had been resolved through methods that left no evidence of human involvement. The coalition wishes to establish formal protocols for human security operations, Speaker Bright announced. Current activities exceed the scope of our original alliance agreements. Reed looked at the alien delegates with the expression of someone explaining obvious facts to slow students. You asked us to solve an existential threat to galactic civilization. We solved it. Now we're ensuring that no similar threats develop in the future. This is what permanent solutions look like. The meeting concluded with diplomatic pleasantries that concealed the fundamental realization that had occurred. The Galactic Coalition had asked for help in fighting a war. They had received allies who redefined the nature of security and conflict throughout known space. Earth's forces were returning home, but they were not withdrawing from galactic affairs. Human colonies, monitoring stations, and response forces were being positioned throughout coalition space. The galaxy was safe from external threats, but it was now under the protection of a species that defined threats differently than anyone else. The war was over. The enemy was extinct. Galactic civilization was secure. But the price of that security was living in a universe where humans decided what constituted acceptable behavior and enforced those decisions with methods that left no room for negotiation or appeal. The coalition had asked for soldiers to help them survive. Earth had sent executioners who ensured that survival came with permanent guarantees. Now everyone had to live with the implications of what had been requested and what had been delivered.